Okay, here we go. This video is about the F50, but we're going to start at the beginning. We have the F10, the F20, the F30, 31, the 40, and the F50 again. This video is basically about the F50. I hope that's in focus, but you get the idea. I have owned these Finepix series models since they came out in 2005 with the F10. And the F30 and 31 had such high ratings. And then the F50 happened, which got a lot of recognition and a lot of bad reviews. So I'm going to start and give you reasons why the F50 is better. And a trick to all of these Finepix models is because of the custom white balance with the flash. On Fuji cameras you can actually set the custom white balance with all the regular lights in the room on and the flash. When you do this, you just point it at a white wall or an off-white wall, you know, even if it's a little dingy, or a ceiling, and you set the white balance. And when you do that, the colors will be spot on. So once that's taken care of, you will be able to trick this camera into giving you awesome colors. And I learned this because there were some very heavy color casts from the F50 and the F30, and I've owned multiple units over the years. That's how I figured this out. The F50 has a green color cast to it in your normal indoor living room situation with mixed lighting, and the F30 and 31 are closer, but they have a little bit of a red tinge to them in comparison. I did all this research over the years because I loved the body design of the F50fd, but hated the flash because it got moved to the right side of the lens. The major advantage of the F50 was the CCD shift. It works excellent, especially in aperture shutter priority mode, set to 1/30th basically, and the default ISO in that mode is 200. Even zoomed in to a max of 105 millimeters, you will get crystal clear shots at 1/30th of a second with excellent exposure at ISO 200. The F30 and 31 would need ISO 400 to 800 depending on the focal length to achieve the same exposure. Pros: the F50 is way faster in operation and in replay and in zoom in when reviewing pics, and the screen is 2.7 inches. The reason the F50 is the best, not only because there's way more detail, and I honestly didn't think that was possible because all the results are so misleading online, making you believe that these lenses can't resolve more than that, 6 megapixels, but they're wrong. So there's a lot more detail, to say the least, with the F50fd. Also, the button and the dial layout allow you to have ISO 200, 400, and 800 all at the turn of a dial, which is great. I use 200, the default, in AS mode, set to S for indoors at 1/30th of a second to be safe. I set M mode to auto ISO 400 with the custom white balance set as well. Then for auto ISO 800, I put it in auto, which I use outdoors, so the color is not an issue. Otherwise you will have color cast issues because you can't set it manually in auto mode. Scene modes are a joke. Fuji does some strange processing to all the images in all scene modes. All old reviews are inaccurate because most issues were fixed a few months in. I found that after serial number beginning with 7CA, they fixed the telephoto exposure and the shutter speeds, because they actually would have a shutter speed of like 1/15 of a second when it could easily have given you the correct exposure at 1/30th of a second. So what they did was they fixed that right around that serial number. And I learned that because I kept buying more and more of them on eBay because they were so cheap. So the exposure issues, even with the C shift, was also improved. And the SD limit in the beginning was only 4 gigabyte. That got raised to 32 gigabyte. So memory was not an issue anymore, whereas the F30 and F31, you could only get a 2 gigabyte XD. Other little quirks: the slow sync flash is very iffy as far as getting a clear pic. Also, exposure comp only works without the flash. So if you have a plus or minus 1 to 2/3 while using the flash, it won't make any difference. The focus speed is also much faster than it is on the F30 and F31. I would say don't bother with the F40 or 47. They do not have image stabilization, and they are slower than the F30 and F31, and especially slower than the F50. Now, after that, they came out with an F60. It's a good second choice, but it's heavier by like 50 grams, and you feel it. And the screen is 3 inches, so the refresh rate is noticeably slower, and it also affects the terrible battery life that you already have. Also, the buttons and dials are much smaller, so all in all, the F50fd and SD are the best, and SE are the best option, even against rivals at the same time, like the Canon SD950IS. After ISO 200, it was over. Canon got it right a few years later, but that's not what we're talking about. So that's what I have found over the last 18 years with these cameras. So this is the 60 with a 3-inch screen, and this is the 50 with the 2.7, and you can notice how much bigger the dials are, and the buttons are spaced further apart, and they're larger. This makes a big difference when you use it. So those are the differences there. The F10 that started it all, this was a beta product. It didn't even have a battery latch, so if you open this battery door, the battery falls out. And they're notorious for the internal memory battery to go bad, and if you take the battery out, you wind up having to reset the time and the date and all of that every time. The F20 would seem like a cheap alternative to the F30, and it is, except they do some crazy like processing. You know, they handicap it. The same thing goes for the F40. They handicap the processing. You're not getting the same picture you would get from an F30 or an F31. And the F40 you cannot use as well because it has a slot for auto and manual, and the scene positions, again, like I said earlier, are a joke. But you would have to set manual to a specific ISO and set the color balance, and that would be it. You'd have to go into the menus to set, you know, ISO 200 to 400, and it's just not worth it. But again, if I had to go somewhere, I would probably take the F30 or 31 for battery life reasons, but the reality is the F50 with an extra battery is your best bet because it's more reliable and it definitely captures a decent more resolution. And the one that I have here is actually made in Japan, which I didn't find one of these until recently. I've owned about 30 of these and they're all made in China. Only the SE, some of them, were made in Japan. The only difference between the SE and the FD is this is shiny black. That's it. On the FD, this is dull black. That's the absolute only difference. So, just to let you know, there's not that much, positive information or correct information. All I'm doing is telling you to take it from me. I've used them all over and over and over, and the F50fd is the best one because of the CCD shift. You're able to use ISO 200 indoors at 1/30th of a second. It will not give you as bright an exposure as the F30 or 31, but it's so slight and can be altered in Photoshop, it's not even worth bringing up. So, hope you enjoyed that one. And I'm gonna hope I could break these down in future videos if you request. If anybody has any questions, put them in the comments and I'll try and answer them and make a video. Thank you.